you wish to know of the veil, then listen and listen well, for it is a story of whispered truths, lost voices, and the thin thread between realms. Before the first wolf howled and clawed their way into legend, the wind carried the voices of all things. The stones hummed with patient songs, the rivers murmured of distant lands, and the spirits wove secrets into the shifting air. But the flesh-born, the flesh-born, they could not hear. They stumbled through the world, deaf to the murmurs of the unseen, blind to the shadows that danced just beyond the firelight. And so they feared what they could not grasp. And what do wolves do when they fear? They bite. They tore down the great trees where spirits nested, drowned the whispering streams, and scarred the land with their wars and their blood. They silenced us. They made the gauntlet. Not all of them, of course. There were some who listened, some who knelt at the roots of the oldest trees, who stood on mountaintops and let the wind teach them its song. They were the first theurges, the first to know our names, the first to walk between flesh and shadow. But knowing was not enough. The gauntlet had grown thick, the divide between worlds more rigid, more cruel. The spirits spoke, but the fleshborn could no longer hear clearly. Their rituals became laboured, their communion strained, their steps through the veil faltering. So one among them, a wolf touched by something far older than Luna, something that whispered in the winds before even spirits had names, sought to bridge the divide. They did not seek to command spirits, as some arrogant fools do, nor to enslave them like the weaver's metal chains. They sought only to hear, to know, to exist within both worlds at once. And so a bargain was made. The Thurge sought out the silver that had never been touched by human hands, a gift from a river spirit that still remembered the first rain. They brought it to a great forge where fire itself whispered ancient names, shaping it not into a weapon, not into armour, but into a simple talk, a circle unbroken, a promise eternal. But silver alone is mute, and so the veil needed a voice. The Thurge journeyed to the wind-swept peaks, where even the worm dares not tread, and there they called out. Not with words, but with their soul laid bare, with the weight of their purpose carved into the very air. And we answered. The spirits of breath and sky, of storm and shadow, of secrets never spoken. We wove ourselves into the silver, whispering our knowledge into its very essence. We bound ourselves in pact, not as slaves, but as keepers of the bridge, guardians of the unspoken words. And thus the whispering veil was born. With it, the Thurge could hear us as no other had before, not just the spirits that whispered freely, but those bound in pain, those lost to time, those chained by the weaver's web. They could speak to what should not be spoken to, hear the voices of places untouched for eons. They walked without barrier, stepping from flesh to spirit, as if the gauntlet did not exist. They were feared by those who sought to keep the worlds apart, for they carried the words of both realms. But knowledge has its cost. Some wore the veil for too long, forgetting which world was theirs. Some listened too deeply, and the weight of 1,000 voices drowned them. And some sought to use the veil not to listen, but to command. They did not last. The spirits are not kind to those who break their oaths. The veil does not serve, it chooses. And those it finds unworthy, they are lost, swallowed into the silence beyond the veil, where even spirits dare not whisper. And so, Cub, I ask you this. Do you seek to wear the veil to listen, or to rule? Will you honour the voices that came before, or will you be another fool swallowed by the silence? If you choose the former, then we shall guide you. We shall be your whisper in the dark, your breath in the cold, your bridge between the worlds. But if you seek dominion, if you seek to twist what was made to listen into something that commands, then I will watch as the wind devours you.
Hush, mortal. Listen to the wind. Do you hear it? Do you feel it brush against your skin, whisper in your ear, slip through your fingers like an untethered dream? You call yourself warrior, hunter, predator. But do you know what it means to be truly free? To exist unchained, bound by neither earth nor law, to dance upon the sky, weightless, timeless, boundless. You do not, but I do. I am the wind. I am the unseen breath that carries the song of the world. I have touched the peaks where no foot has stepped, whispered across the endless seas, raced the lightning to the horizon and beyond, and I have seen those who sought to claim my freedom for themselves. Some fell, some were torn apart, their bodies broken by the hunger of the sky. But a few, a precious few, they learned, they listened, and for them, the sky answered. Long ago, before your kind could name the storm, before you howled at the moon, there was one who stood upon the highest peak and dared to challenge the wind. She was Garu, but she was not content to be of the earth. She was not content to run when she could soar. She climbed beyond the reach of her pack, beyond the domain of stone and root, where the sky itself sought to pull her free from her mortal bindings. For 7 days and 7 nights, she stood there, her fur coated in ice, her breath stolen by the thin air. She did not move, did not sleep, did not waver. She simply gazed into the sky, watching the hawks dance upon the wind, the thunderbirds crack the heavens with their cries, the endless expanse that called to her soul. And we watched her. She did not beg for wings. She did not demand our power. She simply waited. And so, when the 8th dawn came, the Skyborn answered. A shadow fell over her, vast as the storm itself. A great eagle spirit, its wings like the storm's edge, its eyes filled with the endless sky. It gazed upon her and saw the truth in her heart. Not greed, not arrogance, but yearning. You wish to know the sky, it said, but to know the sky is to bear its burden. To be unchained is to surrender all chains. The wind does not love the earth, for it does not belong to it. Do you understand? And the Garu, lips cracked from the wind, throat raw from silence, whispered, yes. And so the eagle spirit plucked a single feather from its chest, a feather made of wind itself, weightless, untouchable, eternal. It set it before her, and with hands trembling from cold and purpose, she took it. Go then, the spirit whispered, and learn what it means to be the wind. She returned, and she sang of what she had seen. The Thurge gathered, the crafters labored. The cloak was woven not of cloth, not of fur, but of wind itself, woven through with the gifts of the sky. Feathers taken from the greatest of birds, not stolen, but given. A single pinion from the sunhawk, kissed by the dawn's light. A midnight feather from the moon crow, shrouded in shadow and silence. A storm plume from the thunderbird, alive with the heartbeat of the storm. And at its heart, the sacred feather of the Skyborn itself. It was bound not with thread, but with the whispers of the wind, the howls of the storm, the breath of the sky itself. It did not rest upon the wearer's shoulders. It became a part of them. And when she first lifted her arms, when she first let go, she did not fall. She flew. But know this, to wear the mantle is to invite the sky into your soul. I have seen it. I have heard their cries upon the wind, those who flew too high, those who forgot that they were once creatures of the earth. And so I ask you, wolf of the ground, do you still wish to wear the mantle? If so, then let the wind take you. Let it lift you beyond flesh, beyond stone, beyond all that you have known. But beware, the sky does not suffer the weak, and the wind never forgets.
I once held it, that damned mask. The fool's last laugh, a grotesque ceramic thing, its face split in eternal contradiction. One side curled in mirth, the other drowned in sorrow. It does not merely sit upon the face. It takes the mind, warping every word, every jest, into something that lingers long after the laughter dies. I was young when it came to me, a fresh galliard of the laughing strays, too eager to chase the echoes of legend. I stole it from the cairn of a forgotten elder, pried it from his crumbling grasp. He had died clutching it, you see, his face locked in the same grin as the mask. That should have been warning enough. They say the spirit inside belonged to a galliard of old, one whose tongue wove chaos into courts and clans alike. He was no mere jester. He was an architect of madness, a maestro of ruin. His jokes turned kings against their kin, set warlords to slaughtering their own banners. He whispered riddles so insidious they could not be unheard, spun tales that unraveled minds like frayed tapestry. In the end, the Silver Fangs branded him a menace, a corrupter, a sickness in wolf's flesh. And so, they ended him. But his spirit lingered, bound into clay and sorcery. His essence found its way into the fool's last laugh, cursed to an eternity of torment and tricks. It does not seek vengeance. No, that would be too simple. It seeks amusement. And for a time I was its fool. The first time I wore it, my voice shifted, became something richer, deeper, laced with terrible knowing. My words cut sharper, my humor twisted darker. I spoke, and alphas faltered, unable to discern the fine line between wisdom and mockery. My stories did not merely entertain, they unsettled, worming their way into dreams and daylight alike. I could turn packmates against one another with a quip, unearth hidden fears with a single jest. The laughter it brought was not light-hearted. It was edged with something brittle, something on the verge of breaking. The worst part? I reveled in it. The mask made me see the absurdity of honor, the frailty of tradition, the hypocrisy of law. I saw the world as the spirit within did, a grand tragic farce, a stage set for puppets who mistook their strings for strength. And so I played the role it demanded. I whispered to the Silver Fangs of hidden omens, twisting prophecy into parody. I spun tales of betrayal so well crafted that even the most steadfast guru turned suspicious of their closest allies. I watched cairns unravel. I saw packs fracture, and through it all they laughed. Gods help me, they laughed. But the mask does not grant power without price. Each time I wore it, it clung a little tighter, seeping into my mind like ink into cloth. The line between myself and the spirit blurred. At first it was a flicker, a thought that did not feel like my own, a chuckle at something that should have been grave. Then it became more. I woke speaking in riddles I did not remember learning. My reflection grinned when I did not. And then one night I tried to remove it. It would not let go. It had become my face. For days, I screamed, laughed, pleaded, my voice shifting between my own and something far older. The pack found me in the woods, writhing, cackling through bleeding lips. It took 3 Theurges and the death of one to rip the mask free. Even then, it did not leave without a parting gift. When they burned it, I felt something inside me scream. A piece of me, torn away with it. I have not laughed since, so hear me, brothers and sisters. If ever you find the fool's last laugh, let it stay buried. Let the trickster rest. For his humor is not for the living, and his jest is the ruin of us all.
You ask me about the Red Circuit. You are a fool to speak its name aloud, but I will tell you, not because you deserve to know, but because perhaps if you understand, you will never seek it. Perhaps you will leave this cursed place and forget you ever asked. Perhaps. Long ago, before even my ancestors' ancestors were pups, the weaver and the worm waged war in the hidden places. We know this. It is not a secret. But what the cubs forget is that war is not a clean thing. It is not a battle where one side wins and one side loses. War is messy. And sometimes, the things left behind are worse than the things that fought to begin with. The Red Circuit is one such thing. He first of our kind to find. It was called Scar-Tongue, a warrior, a hunter, a predator of the purest form, untouched by the filth of cities and the lies of humans. He roamed far beyond our territory, deep into the metal jungle where the glass walkers and their sickly kind fester. He was not afraid. Why should he be? He was Red Talon, the apex, the unbroken. He would not cower before their machines. But something was wrong. Even in the places where the weaver builds its steel webs, there's a rhythm, a pattern, a song even, if you listen closely enough. But in this place, silence, wrongness, the scent of metal, but also the scent of blood, the scent of prey, but also something hungry. Scar-Tongue followed the scent to a pit, not a den, not a building, a pit, dug into the concrete, deeper than it should have been. And there, at the bottom, was the thing. Scar-Tongue did not understand what he had found. It was metal, but it was also flesh. It pulsed, it breathed. It was covered in red veins, thin and tight like the strings of a dying animal, stretched and twitching. Its surface was like a circuit board, etched with patterns of silver and bone, as if someone had tried to carve the weaver's logic into the very meat of a living thing. And it called to him, not in words, not in sound, but in instinct. It spoke in the language of the body, the way the heart races when a hunt begins, the way the teeth itch before the bite is struck. It knew what he was, and worse, it knew what he could become. Scar-Tongue should have destroyed it, should have left, but he did not. He reached out and placed a paw upon it. What he saw, none can say. He was strong, Scar-Tongue, but when he returned to us, he was different. His eyes were not his own. His voice carried strange echoes, and when he spoke, it was not with rage, not with fury, not with the purity of the hunt. It was with knowledge, cold, dead, lifeless knowledge. He told us the Red Circuit was not of the Weaver, that it was not of the Worm, that it was something else, something between, a thing left behind, a thing abandoned, a piece of war's aftermath, waiting for the next fool to pick it up. And worst of all, he told us it could be used. It whispered of power, of the ability to tear apart the lies of human speech, to infect the minds of prey so they would kneel before the Garou instead of running. It claimed it could turn the Weaver's own machines against themselves, that with just a touch, any device, any city could be made to obey instinct, not logic. Some believed him. Some saw the use in this thing. But those of us who are wise, we saw what it was doing to him. His breath came in hitches, in unnatural stops and starts. His eyes flickered, like a candle caught in a wind it did not understand. He laughed at things that were not funny. He paused before speaking, as if something was choosing his words for him. So we did what we must. We hunted him, as we would any beast that had lost itself. He did not run. He did not fight. He only laughed, a sound like a broken animal. And as we descended upon him, he whispered, "It will find another." We buried what remained, but not the Red Circuit. We did not burn it. We did not destroy it. Because we could not. It did not die. It only waits. You see now why we do not speak of it. Why we do not seek it. Some say it still lies beneath the city, pulsing, waiting for another Garou foolish enough to place a paw upon its surface. Others claim it has already found a new host, that it is walking even now, whispering, laughing, spreading itself like a sickness of the mind. The Red Circuit is not a weapon. It is not a tool. It is a joke played by something that does not laugh as we do. A remnant of a war between forces that should never have touched the world. And yet, they did. And they left their debris behind. So remember this, young one. There are some things in this world that should remain buried. Some power is not worth holding. Some knowledge is not worth knowing. The Red Circuit is one of those things, and if you ever hear its call, run.
You want to know about the hammer, the cursed thing that stole my pack, the thing of silver and thunder. Sit down, cub, and listen. Listen well, for I have seen its wrath, and I have felt its bite. The Storm Father does not bless, it judges. And my pack, we were found wanting. We were many, strong, blessed by the worm, chosen to tear down the weak. We had done what others feared to do. We had feasted on the hearts of our enemies, howled through their burning cairns, shattered their bones beneath our claws. And yet, one Garou, one, destroyed us. The night we met him, the sky split open like a festering wound. The storm had been unnatural, crackling with a fury I had never known. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of ozone and something older than time itself. And then he stepped through the rain. I do not know his name. The spirits whispered it, but their voices were lost in the rolling thunder. A lone warrior, his fur streaked with silver and war paint, his eyes burning like the storm itself, and in his grasp, Mjolnir. I have seen many weapons, talons blessed with corruption, claws dipped in the worm's bile, but never have I seen such a thing as that hammer. It sang, not with music, but with the rage of the storm. He did not speak, he did not snarl, he only raised the hammer, and the storm answered. It struck us before we even moved. Lightning, not of nature, but of fury. It knew us, it hunted us. A bolt from the heavens crashed into the heart of our camp, tearing flesh from bone, shattering shields of worm-tainted steel. I watched as my brothers screamed, their bodies caught in the chains of light, their bones blackened, and their howls drowned beneath the rage of Gaia herself. I charged him first. I had to tear that cursed weapon from his hands, had to rip his throat out before he could call down another storm. But Mjolnir, it is no ordinary weapon, it moves. The moment I lunged, he hurled it, not at me, but through me. I felt my ribs break, I felt my blood turn to fire. And then the hammer was gone, vanished from the muds where it had landed. But before I could rise, before I could breathe, it was back in his hand. No distance, no wall, no force could separate him from it. It was his, and it was hungry. The others were fools, cowards. My pack tried to flee. They thought the storm would spare them, but the hammer does not spare. It does not forgive. It follows. One by one, it found them. It shattered Skullgrin's jaw before he could whisper a plea to the worm. It crushed Blackwren's spine with a single blow, his body flung like a broken doll. It did not care for our gifts, for our strength. It judged us, and we were nothing before it. And then the shield came down. Oh, I remember the moment well. The warrior, this lone wolf, this stormwalker, he slammed Mjolnir into the earth, and suddenly the winds themselves became his armor. Claws could not touch him. Arrows were torn from the sky. Fire flickered and died before reaching him. We were trapped, not by walls, not by chains, but by the sky itself. And in that moment, I knew. This was no weapon. This was no mere fetish. This was a sentence, passed down by the hand of the Stormfather, executed by the will of its wielder. And we were already dead. And yet, here I am, telling you this tale, the last of the Howling Abyss pack. Do you wonder why? Do you ask why the hammer did not smite me down where I stood? Because it chose to let me live. Do not mistake this for some foolish hope of redemption. It left me because it wanted me to remember, to spread the tale, to ensure that every black spiral dancer, every worm-touched fool, every cursed soul who thinks they are safe from the wrath of Gaia knows that there is no running, no hiding, no bargaining with the storm. Mjolnir does not hunt, it does not seek war. It simply waits for the next to be judged. So now you know. You asked, and I have told you. But if you still seek it, if you think yourself worthy to take it from the hands of its master, then you are a greater fool than I. Pray that you never see the one who carries it. Pray that you never hear the roll of thunder that comes without rain. For if you do, you are already dead.